Yo, what's going on, peeps? Welcome to another episode of MC2MC, and this is a little bit of a special one, man. This is a new background, new faces.
Yeah.
We got Kelly King in the building. Dillon.
Back again.
This is
Dillon.
Welcome to East Iris Studios. Yeah.
Got the SSL console behind us.
Mm-hmm. She's a beautiful one. This
Yes.
is one of my favorite consoles.
How many channels is this?
Oh, that's a good question. Trent just left the room, who's my assistant, but definitely not the 80-something that are in Studio A.
Okay.
Right? But, which we can do a little tour of a little later. We'll take the cameras around
Yeah,
and
maybe
see.
we might put some of that footage in this episode.
Yeah.
You know
We'd
what I'm
love
saying?
that.
A little tour
We'd
episode.
love that.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, y'all.
Thanks
thanks
for
for
letting
coming
us
on,
be
yeah.
here. Yeah, like this is rad. Like,
You're home away from home.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
the
East
studio
Iris.
is incredible. Yeah, we were talking about that before we started. The intricate works on the wall, like it looks like it's hand sewn with mirrors in it and stuff.
Isn't it
It's
beautiful?
incredible. Yeah.
It's such a vibe. The whole studio campus has, I believe, 11 buildings. We have 9 studios, 2 that are Atmos studios. We just built our 3rd Atmos room, which I'll take you on a tour of too. It's not quite finished, but it's getting there. And I have to say, every space has its own unique, beautiful kind of design to it. Studio C here that we're in, you're right to notice all the paneling is just gorgeous, and the fact that we're in a studio and there's skylights, which is usually not typical. It's like vampire layers usually, but
beautiful.
yeah, every spot on campus has kind of its own little vibe, and I just particularly love this room. And you notice the board right away. The board is just fantastic.
So is this
to
your
work on.
favorite room?
It's hard to say that I have a favorite. These are all my babies, around here now. And I've fallen in love with each and every one of them for different reasons. I think this is my favorite room to listen in.
Yeah.
In terms of like regular stereo mixes, not Atmos. Atmos is a whole different experience listening. But yeah, no, I think this is one of my favorite rooms to listen in, and it's got a lot of history.
I noticed you got like Studio D, Studio C, right? Like, do you guys have like nicknames for them? Do you got like if you're going to this studio, do you just go by the letters, or you guys have clever names?
No, we haven't. I wouldn't say they're clever names. There's like the 2 buildings that are on this side of the street. I call the twins. So Studio C and D are the twins, and we're sitting in the female twin. For whatever reason, Studio C is female to me, and Studio D is male to
So
me.
they're like nocturnal twins?
Maybe. You mean like, fraternal or...
Fraternal.
I don't know what they're...
Nocturnal, that's like
sleeping.
they're nighttime
Well,
twins.
they
right?
are, because it's a studio, so that kind of worked.
Oh,
That's
did it?
why
Okay.
I went with it, because it really did work. It's like they are always being
all
used
good.
at night. You knew what you were
Correct me.
saying.
Yeah, I know what I was talking about.
Yeah, no, we
Sorry.
I guess they have a vibe together kind of, and they give off different things. Studio F we tend to call like the rock room, because rock and hip hop artists tend to feel more comfortable in that space for whatever reason. And then here in Studio C we get a lot of like the CCMG crowd, so the contemporary Christian music artists. They love it in here as well.
I get it.
And then the Cave does have its own name in the sunroom. That's the only facility on campus that is not named by a letter. It's called the Cave in the sunroom, and I don't really know the history behind that, but it fits. Like the sunroom is definitely the sunroom, and the Cave is definitely the Cave. And Studio A is known as the Beast because it's the Beast.
D.
Yeah.
Wait, is it Studio D that's right there? Is that the Atmos?
Yes.
Now, I
Currently an
remember
Atmos
last
room.
time we were here, you said that building was moved.
Yeah, from Memphis. So,
Yeah.
so the previous owner of the studios here is a guy named Gary Bells, and he grew up in Memphis, so he loves all things Memphis. And I think there's like a lot of music history behind the building, but he was obsessed with it, and so when he bought this campus, he picked it up on a truck and moved the entire building here. So the building has a lot of history. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. It's like, this is so important to me. I'm going to move
it.
house.
Yeah, I'm going to take it with me. That's real
awesome.
cool.
Crazy.
So, yeah, so currently it says an Atmos studio over there, but we're going to make it probably one of the first ever, definitely in Nashville, the first ever hybrid studio. So it's going to be capable of doing traditional recording. And then while you're recording, or by the end of that session, you can Atmos mix right on the spot, which is going to be really cool.
I was doing a little snooping around in A when I got here. Because I remember that you like walk in and then you like walk to the left. I think it's like a mixing room.
Yes, Studio B.
Yeah, okay. Last time we were here, I don't think it was built out all the way.
It's getting there now.
And I saw there was like a little vinyl press thing.
Yeah, so we have an old school lathe machine in there that, and a lot of our staff members are some of the best in the business of all time, and they know how to actually cut vinyl and cut records. So we'll be doing that here. We'll be one of the facilities in the country that's cutting vinyl.
So Third Man's got some competition out here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So it's Studio B is a multitude of things. It now has that in there. It's a mastering room, a mixing room. We use it for writers' nests as well. So it's got a lot of diversity in that little tiny room.
And I wanted to ask too, just because like I'm the music dumb one. Atmos, what is that?
Great question. So Dolby Atmos is what it really stands for. Spatial audio, immersive audio. You've maybe heard several of those terms. To me, it's the next frontier of music, and it's been here a while. The technology's been around for years and years and years. We've seen it in movie theaters, right? And so when we go to a Dolby, movie theater, you're hearing the sound kind of participate with the music. It's a feeling of like you feel you're there. That's the point of it. So Dolby had a great initiative to want to kind of carry that into music to where you feel like you are actually experiencing what maybe the lyricists and the writers and the producers want you to experience. So if it's like the song Rocket Man, for example, by Elton John, and the title in and of itself is Rocket Man.
So great.
Yes, it's one of my favorite ones. You feel rockets are flying past you. And it's all what was recorded in the 70s in the tracks. We just couldn't hear it before in the capacity of having to compress and squash down into a traditional speaker setup. But now we've spatialized it. We've opened it and kind of put it wherever in the room that makes sense or traveling through the room that makes sense. So it just takes listening to music to now a completely different level. And you get a little addicted to it. And, I'm not crazy technical side of this, even though I'm the studio manager here. I'm more of just a massive fan of music and want to do whatever I can to continue to advance it. And I think this is it. It's really cool, And
it sounds incredible too. Just like it kind of sounds like just taking surround sound to the extreme and then being able to add new features.
Yeah.
I remember there was something I think it was on YouTube a while ago where they added like the 12, like as opposed to the 5-1 or whatever it is, they had the 12 breakdown. You could listen to music and it sounded like it was going around you. But the interesting thing I was thinking of when you mentioned that was more how that might tie into like the VR, AR, meta worlds coming out.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to definitely join. You'll see, when you experience just even from a sound aspect of it in the room, you definitely already get that sense of that it's all around you. Like take your favorite artist, right? And, we'll just throw out one of our universal artist, Ariana Grande, right? And you feel that she's right in front of you, but you now also feel she's right beside you and right behind you and right. The fan experience should be incredible, and for that environment. But you almost feel metaverse-ish in it,
Like you're in a concert, like you can make
you're
it so
right
they sound like
there.
they're on stage and you're right up front.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
when do you think like Dolby Atmos is just going to be like a regular
household thing?
Yeah,
That's a really
people
good question. That's the part that maybe my non-technical brain doesn't quite grasp. But if I had any predictions, I think it's coming fast and furious. So with the way that artists and labels and everybody are kind of on the speed way right now of getting their music Atmos mixed, you would only think, oh gosh, that means that it's kind of right around the corner for the consumers. I know cars are the next best spot to listen to music, right? We're in our cars all the time. Now there's so many coming in cars, with not just Tesla having them, but I think Mercedes is going to launch the Atmos ability as well, the Dolby sound in there. And I believe, once a company like a Ford or something gets involved, it's only a matter of time before the consumer wants to listen to music and consume it that way all the time.
With Tesla doing that too, that's pretty big because like once they did the electric truck, like 3 other companies were like, we can do that. Like we should do that, right?
Right.
I just want to say shout out to Walt Disney because I feel like he's a big part of why Dolby and stuff exist now in these studios.
He's
He was
the
like the
goat
first
of all
guy bringing
goats.
like color and sound to film.
We
you know?
should always go back to the beginning, right?
Yes.
To the innovators of all that stuff. But that's, I think, the beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, for me, it's exciting that we've not stopped innovating and we've not stopped thinking about what could make something a more enjoyable experience. And that's the exciting part. But I do think, to answer your question, I think it's coming soon. There's several consumer systems that are available for home setups that are different price points, ranging from $2,000 to $10,000 to $15,000, and what you can configure and set up in your own house. Yeah. So I think as the word spreads, as the experiences spread, I don't think it's too long before this happens. Headphones are even getting amazing with this.
Oh yeah.
I know
Like-
Apple tried something with the earphones that you could listen from all.
Apple has some
apps or
great
something like that.
headphones involved in it. They've been a big supporter of, you know, this initiative. And I think that, you know, across the board, they're always at the forefront of those kinds of things. And I know they're working constantly to improve the experience even more, you know.
Well,
That's
all right,
cool.
man. I want to dive into some of these questions. I want the people to really know who Kelly King is.
Okay.
So, yeah, you were born in Atlanta.
I was born in Atlanta, but was only there for a good 6 months of my life
You
before
came straight
moving
here.
here to Nashville. So I really do claim Nashville apart from the Georgia Bulldogs. Go Dogs! Because both my parents graduated from the University of Georgia, so we bleed Georgia Bulldogs in our house. Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel like. I was born in New Orleans, but shortly after here, then like my mom and her family, they grew up in Goodlettsville.
Okay.
So-
So you are Tennessee bred too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I definitely claim Tennessee, Nashville
Yeah.
as my hometown. And like I said, the only ties really back to Georgia are that we root for the Dogs. Yeah.
So, all right, yeah, cool. So Nashville, I'm just call you a unicorn then. That's
Yes,
what we call it.
we're unicorns, right?
Nashville
Yes,
people.
that's what I hear that all the time now.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah, unicorns, mystical creatures we are.
I'll take it.
Yeah. So music. Anybody in your family musical besides you?
In my family, we have no one is professionally musical like me, but everybody has musical talents, meaning their pitch, their ear, their singing abilities, I was the only one to just like really act on it and kind of dive into training harder and those kinds of things when I was really young. But my dad has a great singing voice. He used to play banjo a little bit, even though he's from Chicago. He's the one not from the South. And then my mother, my whole life had us growing up singing in church, and she was in the church choir. So I really credit most of my training and my ear to church. SATB at church, you know, you get it all with, you know, hearing all the parts and learning about the dynamics and stuff. And then my brother, I actually think he was born with a lot more talent than I was just naturally, but he just didn't have the desire to pursue it. He just is a big fan of music, but didn't pursue it the way I did at such a young age. I just was this weird kid that wanted to do nothing but entertain since I was little. Yeah.
Interesting. So I was reading on your wiki,
Which is in Spanish.
Yeah, which is in Spanish.
Yes.
I do want to get to why it is in Spanish. But yeah, I was reading on there. You also lived in New York.
Yes. So I lived in New York City for 13 years. So it's actually been a good 20 years that I did not live in Nashville. So I grew up in Nashville, but then basically my adult life spent mostly away from Nashville, and then came back here last July to be here at East Iris Studios. So in a weird way, it is like a new town to me again because
Similar story to me. 'Cause I
Nashville's
lived in,
changed so much. Yeah.
Dallas for like 13 years.
A chunk of it.
I
Yeah. And
just
then
moved
came back
like,
home.
I moved back when like all the shit hit the fan. So like
Really?
I moved back February 25th, 2020. And that was like
Wow.
2 weeks before the tornado that hit East.
Ooh, wow.
And then like 3
You
weeks
did.
before quarantine and COVID.
Oh my gosh, you did get back right before all
Yeah.
the craziness hit. Yeah, no, I missed that, thank goodness. But I was in New York City for 13 years, so I moved there for basically pursuing music, which is strange to say. But I didn't sing country music and I didn't sing contemporary Christian music. And at the time in Nashville, that's all that
it was,
really you
yeah.
could do here. Not anymore. Obviously, there's so much more to Nashville now than that. But I was told that if I were going to really pursue a career in original music and the way my voice was, that I would be better suited in LA or New York. And I visited both the cities, and I just fell in love with New York. So I moved to New York.
Better than LA.
I mean, I wasn't going to say it, but I would definitely agree. So I moved to New York, and only a few months later got signed to my major label deal. So that was a good move, the right move. And like I said, I have a deep love affair with the city of New York and with the people of New York. And my closest friends in the world have come out of New York. And I had amazing career opportunities that happened in New York. It's, as I say, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. So, doing and being in the scene so thick in New York City really helped me cut my teeth in a different kind of way even.
Yeah, I feel like New York, too, gives you a different kind of energy. Like me and my brother are from upstate New York, and, I've been to the city, I don't know, several dozen times. So,
right.
I visited a lot there. At one point wanted to move there, but, after visiting Nashville several times, my brother moved here, almost a decade ago, and just every time I visited, there's like a new skyscraper downtown, and I'm like, what the heck?
It's nuts.
And I moved here 2019, about I think it was October, and so I got here for a few months, got to get settled in, and then the world shut down.
Crazy.
But it was interesting because being from upstate New York, the thing I like about Nashville is it has almost everything a city normally has, but it still has like a small town vibe, even with this like downtown. Growing so crazy. So,
and I hope we hold on to that here in Nashville. I know, parts of the city proper are definitely changing, and it's not that anymore. But if you get a little bit outside, Franklin has the most insane amount of charm. They're not going to allow it to change either. Certain towns around Nashville are definitely going to say, no, we're good the way that we are, and not really change. But I agree. I think it has the best of all worlds now. It kind of reminds me of New York City when I moved there I moved to New York in like 2006, I believe, or 2005.
It's 07 on Wiki.
Yeah, maybe.
How accurate is Wiki?
Well, apparently they know way more about me than I do.
Right.
But yeah, somewhere around that might have been when I was signed. I think I'm not sure, but it had this incredible energy, and it was like, a lot of building going on, and not like in terms of the buildings, but in terms of careers and companies that were coming into New York. And so the energy was wild and fun and safer than it is right now. And I feel that Nashville now has that same feel. Like if you went to Times Square at that time period, it was just like your eyes are just like, are you kidding me? That's happening on Broadway in Nashville. It's like
information overload.
Yeah,
like, oh my God,
anytime I have a company, come to town, I take them downtown. They're like, "This is awesome," and we're like, "Oh gosh, let me go home." But they love it, and it's that really fun, kind of crazy energy. But you're right, New York is all about that. It's all about an energy, and I always said it kind of had its own heartbeat, the city, and if you were strong enough to keep up with that beat, then, you would do fine there. Or if you prefer more the vibe life, LA is the place for you. I had a friend tell me that. They're like, the difference between New York and LA. New York is about an energy and LA is about a vibe. And it is so true.
That is true.
And I lived in LA for 6 or 7 years of that 20 years I was away. And I didn't hate it. It just is a different thing. It's if you're a vibe type person, you're going to love it. And if you're an energy person, you probably thrive in a place like New York.
I feel like LA, it's like, because New York's moving all the time, and LA is just trying to move all the time, but you're stuck in traffic.
The traffic is for real.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes Nashville keep that charm, is that it's still small. Like, even though there's a huge downtown now, like, everything's still right here. It's like 20 minutes to anywhere. You can cross the whole city.
Thank goodness.
Yeah,
that's interesting y'all say that. I feel like Nashville, I've always felt like it was like a southern LA or something to me.
It does feel now that I've moved back, I get what you're saying. Nashville feels now like it's kind of like the best of all worlds. Yeah. It's got a little New York. It's got a lot of LA, I think, but a lot of Nashville still in it. So it's like, to me, this perfect combination, which I think is why it's so popular now.
A lot of people from LA are moving here, too.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's why everybody's coming here. It's got this great palette for food, and so a foodie type person, the food is amazing here, like you would think in New York. The food is amazing, and it's got, these vibes going on like LA, and the kind of that slower pace that you're talking about, which comes from the southern sort of arm of that. But
That's
and
why I
it's very
kind of don't
diverse.
like
You don't like
LA
that part?
as much. Yeah, my cousin lives in Hawthorne, actually right by SpaceX. Shouts out K-Wash.
Yeah.
We out here, man. Yeah. But yeah, the pace. I mean, I'm a Southern guy, so like, I don't know. I feel like we talk slow, like we're just
Yes.
chill, like
Yes.
you know, it's cool to visit. I've never actually been to New York. I don't know how that would.
How is that possible?
I don't know.
Yeah, you gotta go.
I mean, they never took me. What's the deal?
You'll have to
You
bring
know
it
what
back.
I'm saying? Like, y'all ain't never offered me to go to New York, bro. What's
They
the
would
deal,
love you
man?
there.
I don't know.
They
Maybe.
would love you. Your accent, they would just be like, oh,
So,
Really?
I feel like they'll love you in
Southern
the
draw.
room, but like they'll hate you on the sidewalk. That's what it is.
This guy. I
No.
feel
I'm
like
trying to
y'all
get
just too
someplace.
aggressive sometimes for me, man. I'm like, yo,
you know,
man.
I never had an issue with that kind of stuff. Everybody
Yeah.
always kind of warned me. They were like, "Ooh, they're kind of rude in New York, so like, be careful." I didn't find it rude. I found it, to your point, it was like, if I was lost, I could, or didn't know the train system, whatever, I could literally walk up to any New Yorker and say, "Hey, I'm so sorry. Can I bother you? Can you point me in the right direction?" They would always do it. Now, a rude person would be like, "Ugh, I don't have time," and walk away. They'd be like, "Sure, you're going this way and that way and this way and this way. Bye."
Yeah.
And they're gone. So it's not that they were rude to not do it. They just are fast paced,
Got
but they
shit to
still
do.
always help
Yeah.
me. Yeah, like I never met someone there that wasn't willing to help me through a situation of New York, but they just did it in a very fast paced way.
Interesting. So there's actually a question I wanted to ask you about that, because you left for quite a while, then you came back. So that's similar to how I feel. And what the question I wanted to ask is, like, leaving, coming back to a totally new Nashville.
Yes.
To me personally, I think I mentioned this to Shea Butter Shot a couple episodes ago. To me, it felt like a blessing, because it was like, I didn't grow up here my whole life. And I know when you like grow up somewhere your whole life, you can maybe feel a little complacent or not realize
Sure.
the opportunities that are around you, because you're just so used to that
that's
place.
a possibility
Yeah.
for sure.
So when you left, came back, did you feel that way? Did you like, like I'm seeing Nashville in a new light? I kind of have like this new sense of purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I feel that way in general about every choice I end up making in
Yeah.
life, because I think everything is a blessing in it. For me, I'd have to say it goes deep, like really deep, that blessing, because, again, as entertainers in our tribe, I guess I would say, we're the gypsy kids, right? All of us, we travel, we leave our families behind, we pursue this, dream of music and entertainment and have a tribe of people from everywhere. I know people in all over the world. It seems like it's a really cool thing, but you did kind of make a choice in that to not be with your family every day, or the people that raised you, or whatever it may be. So at some point, at least for me in this, I finally woke up one day and was like, I need to get home. I need to see my family more. My niece is growing up. My parents are getting older. There's, I haven't been there for a lot of that stuff. And that's what kind of sparked the move back home for me. It wasn't necessarily career, even though, thank goodness, we're in Nashville where I can still do what I love. But it was that thought process of, oh, wow, I've been away so long. And I think I want to go spend some time with my family and go home and see what it's like. Kind of when I made that decision, God opened the doors that needed to be open to make that happen. And within a month or two, I was moving to Nashville just based off that one thought. Got home and have had the most amazing time kind of hanging out with my family again and my parents. And then to speak on the blessing, I would have never known that my mother would have suddenly passed away in January, this past just recent January, where I bought 7 months with her that I didn't know that I even needed to have, right? So the blessings are, that's an understatement of a word. I got home in July. I was able to spend all those months with my mother that I wouldn't have physically been in the presence of. And I look at that and I'm baffled by it. I'm like, gosh, God is amazing. Like, I had no clue. And how would I have felt to have lost her and still been living in LA? It's just for me beyond a blessing, but it's more so that supernatural stuff versus, the blessing of, wow, coming back to the city that's now so incredible. That's an added bonus. And you're absolutely right. I feel that way too. Like we couldn't be in Nashville at a better time. Like,
Oh yeah.
in terms of the growth that's happening, the music that's expanding here, the abilities that we have now in Nashville to pursue, you know, as competitively as the big dogs of New York and LA. And I think Nashville's right on the cusp of bursting down those doors. So in that sense, it is a massive blessing.
I think the other big thing too is it's not just bursting from music, like the entertainment in general. Like there's tons of video production teams that are moving here. There's tech coming here.
Film,
Oracle campus
TV.
being built.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Oracle campus. So there's tech coming here. Like there's like so many other things coming here that's going to amplify it.
Yes.
Like we spoke with an app developer in the music, space, right? So like
Kevin McCarty.
Yeah, Kevin McCarty from We Should Write Sometime. It's like the the Tinder of the music writing.
I
world.
love that.
Yeah, and
I've
it's
heard of that. It's
like,
amazing.
Yeah, it's like an excellent tool, but like that's happening because people in Nashville are doing more than just music now, which is an
Yes.
incredible thing.
Yes, it is. It's a beautiful time to be here. So in that sense, yes, it is. And then for me, like I said, on the personal side, even crazier that I came home when I did. And I'm so
that's,
glad
like,
that I
super
did.
lucky.
Yeah,
Could have been
I
1
know.
year difference, and like
Can you even believe it? But that I've been that way through my whole career. And I think if I speak on something today, it'd be around that we talk about it all the time. Listen to your gut, the little God voice, the whatever it is. A lot of people in our business have a hard time, and I'm asked a lot, like, how do I know when to make certain choices or when to go after something or not? And I think it's super important to open your third eye or your mind's eye to that inner voice. And I've always led that way in my career.
That's what brought me back.
Yes.
Yeah, the
Yes,
gut feeling.
exactly.
I was like, man, let me go back.
Yes,
That's
and
right.
you just go and you act on it. A lot of people won't do that. And so I say in our business, especially when it comes down to like, we have to rely on a lot of people's opinions. So you've written a song, you think it's amazing and you love it, and then all of a sudden you change your mind because 6 other people are telling you, it's okay, I just don't like. Why? Like, just follow your gut on it and trust your instinct on it. If you think that you're surrounding yourself with the right people, who cares if it's, what somebody else thinks is right or wrong for you. And I think that is a tough thing to do in our business because oftentimes we get these, what I call the carrots dangling in front of us, and you think, oh, this opportunity is bigger over here, but yet you were really working on something that may seem like harder work, but that was, you felt in your gut was like super special, and we'll quickly jump to the dangling carrot.
The shiny object syndrome. That's
Yeah.
what it is,
Yeah, and that I'm guilty of it at times, for sure. I've had that happen in my career, but it's now the hindsight looking back and going, oh, well, the things that I actually just followed on my gut lead have always panned out positively as next steps. The things that I was just jumping at were temporary. And that's cool too, but because you learn from it, but they were more temporary type things.
Yeah, one of the things whenever I'm talking to somebody about things like intuition, the thing I like to say is that the more experience and knowledge you have, that's when you should trust your gut more. Like, because like when you're a kid, you chase the shiny red ball into the street, right? When you're an adult, you're like, hey, I'll look both ways. So I feel like the longer you're in the music industry, that's when you should start trusting your gut. Like when your gut's telling you something, it's like maybe you were around a couple people that, didn't fit with what you were doing, and then suddenly you're getting that same feeling again. It's like that feeling's probably right.
I completely agree.
But like when you're like young and just starting, like it's okay to chase shiny objects for a while, but definitely like you do want to find a path and start moving down it.
I think there's a balance. There's like a fine balance of like logical decisions and feeling, I feel like, in the creative industry. I feel like there's also like there needs to be like a certain level of like self-awareness, like that thing you're saying about writing a song earlier. Like it might feel good to you, and other people might not like it. And I feel like there's a balance of like maybe I should go with this song, but I feel like there's a level of self-awareness and like credibility you need to keep with yourself. Like, are you getting better? Or are you doing those certain things?
I agree. You do have to listen, and you do have to take things in. And you're right. You can't just only go on you and you alone. I do believe surrounding yourself with great mentors or people that you fully trust with that, because that's a very earned spot, I think, and should be, of, okay, who are you going to ask? What's the reason why you trust them? And then how much of an impact will they have on your decision, so, but I agree. And I do wish more people would learn, especially in the younger generation now of musicians, of, hey, take some advice, like try some new things. Because we can, you don't know everything. Nobody knows everything.
I think
so
what
you're
it
right.
is, though,
There's a
it's like,
balance.
I feel like That's funny you say that because I have a lot of mentors. But when I look at
I do too.
people my age, a lot of them don't. And I feel like maybe what it is was like my generation in particular is just like the access of information that we have.
You have.
It's like we feel like we know everything because we can like go on
Just
YouTube
look,
or
yeah.
something and go look at it. So we're like, oh, why do I listen to you? Like,
You're
just
so
type
right.
it up.
Yeah,
You know?
that's the
It's a
weird
great
thing
point.
though too. Like, growing up like right as Google was becoming a thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like still having to learn things on your own, and then like the people that were born in Google already existed, and like we've talked to so many artists where they ask a question, and I'm like, have you just Googled that before? Like, it's the answers are there. So like,
Isn't that weird?
Advocate of Google, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
weird. I found real deal, like old world encyclopedias the other day in my mom's house. And I was like, wow, this is from the year 1988. This is what happened in that year. And I was like, we have no reason for this book anymore. You can literally Google what happened significantly in the year 1988. But then I was like, well, maybe we can fact check a little bit here. Maybe like they're just making stuff up
Yeah.
on Google. Who knows? And so, but this had to have been accurate. This came from the year 1988. And it was just weird
it's like,
thought.
it's like
Like,
Wikipedia
it's written in this book.
knew when you moved, and you're like, is that when I moved?
Exactly. I don't know. So, yeah. So my Wikipedia being in Spanish. Do you want to know about that?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, before we get to that, I want to take
Okay.
it back again a little bit. We're just
Take it back.
bouncing around here, a little time machine. So, yeah, when you moved to New York, you say you got a record deal. I don't know if it
Yes.
said what label that was. on
Warner.
Wiki. Okay,
Yeah.
Warner. Okay.
Warner
So,
Music Group.
did you go to like school or anything, or you just like hop straight into going to New
No,
York?
so I went straight into the biz because I started as a child artist and professional. I started professionally singing when I was 10. Just growing up in Nashville, I had opportunities to do that, and my parents were just cool about it. They were like, "Sure, go do it. As long as you keep up your grades at public school, then you're fine." That was the one rule. So I would find every audition possible and just go. I forced my parents. I'd be like, "There's an audition on Sunday. You're taking me." So growing up in Nashville, I started in the professional world really young. I had a TV show for 4 years here, so I did a lot on camera.
Oh.
I had
Talk more about that. Wait.
You didn't know about that?
I
Yes,
don't know
it's
about
not in the
TV
Spanish
show,
part of my
Yeah,
Wikipedia.
that's not in there.
Yeah, no.
That's the part that didn't translate.
Yeah. So I was the local Fox kid. So back in the day, they had, we didn't have as many stations to watch on TV. There was like 5 you could watch. And if you had cable, then you could get maybe like 15 more. But that was about it, So you really did just watch your local stations a lot. And Fox 17, which is still the local Fox network here, they ran cartoons in the morning before kids would go to school, and then they'd run cartoons in the afternoon when they get home from school, and cartoons on Saturday mornings. So in between the cartoons during the commercial breaks, sometimes there'd be these little educational pieces where myself and a co-host named Colin, we were both 11, 12-ish years old, and we'd pop on camera and say, "Hey kids, this is Kid Stuff. I'm Kelly." And "I'm Colin. Today we're talking about George Washington. He was the first president of the United States." And you would just give these tidbits of little information for educational purposes. We were on like 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the afternoon, but it was a daily thing. So I had become a local celebrity. Everybody knew Kelly from Fox and Colin from Fox. Yeah.
Are any of these clips available on?
I have every single one of them that my mother saved in the house. Yes. So, but I don't even know if they're on YouTube because, none of that existed back then.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that's all people could access were those TV shows. There was not Google search. There was not YouTube. I don't even know if the internet really existed back then. It
What are we
did.
talking
It
about,
was
like
just
80s?
not much. No, this was like 90s. Early 90s, mid 90s.
Yeah, that's when it was like,
right, when
computers were
started.
like just getting into people's house. Like,
yeah, they weren't in schools really yet. All that it's kind of crazy.
I was like an embryo.
You were. You probably were not. You were or just a thought of
Collecting
maybe
the-
one day existing.
Yeah, I think, like-
consciousness of the earth at that
That's
time.
right. It's how old I am. But
I think we just had computers because like our stepdad worked at a computer company. But like,
yeah,
not
some
not all my
families
friends
had a
them,
few,
yeah.
or something of the nature. We didn't have cell phones then, nothing.
Wow.
So that's what you did. You watched cartoons in the afternoon when you got home from school, and then you went outside to play after they were over. So it's just, it was a different time, but I was famous because of it, and couldn't go anywhere with my family without kids running up or people like, oh my gosh, it's Kelly from Fox, can we get a picture?
Wow.
And not on a cell phone picture. They would carry a little, you know,
Set up a tripod.
the little roll camera things, you know, the little film ones. It's all film back then. Or we'd have
Disposables were that's what you just saying.
I was thinking of the brand, isn't it?
disposables, yes.
Oh, the Kodak.
Kodak,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes,
camera.
Kodak disposable cameras.
Yeah.
People would carry around, or there'd be set dates where you can meet Kelly and Colin at the wave pool for that day. That kind of stuff, where we had little things we'd sign. But so I did that, and there was this theme park that used to exist here in Nashville. It was probably Nashville's biggest mistake, was getting rid of the theme park. It was called Opryland, and I performed at Opryland.
Dude.
Yeah,
They need a theme park
Gosh.
here. That's what
right? And it was right where the Opry Mills Mall is now. Ugh. So that was there, and I performed there 5 days a week. So it was an odd childhood, but to answer your original question, I had the opportunity to potentially go to Berklee College of Music in Boston. I had gotten a scholarship to start there my freshman year, but instead decided to pursue the full-fledged, music business. I was doing well in it. Even the professors and the dean there thought, with your resume, you probably should go pursue this right now. And then come back to school if you need to. And just never ended up needing to go back to school.
Wow. Interesting. So, okay, around the time, so you go to New York. I was reading something about Duke Ellington. Now, it says you're in the Duke Ellington Orchestra, but Duke Ellington died, so long ago. So I'm just curious,
So his legacy, his lineage, obviously will go on and on and on.
Yeah.
There's a man named Jeff Jeffers who was part of Duke Ellington's band when Duke was alive.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff carried on the live aspect of the Duke Ellington Orchestra at the very famous Birdland in New York City, which was the jazz club that Duke played at very frequently and, was really famous venue, and he was really famous there with his orchestra. So Jeff, who was part of his band at the time, carried on the tradition, and there was basically the New York, which is the best of the best, Duke Ellington Orchestra, and then one traveling group of the Duke Ellington Orchestra that's all affiliated with Duke and with Duke himself, based around Jeff and the rights around that music. So when I moved to New York, I kind of made this decision in life that I would, since I had already performed my whole life and I never had a normal job outside of the entertainment industry, it was just this one little quirk of my own where I said, I'm never going to work a normal job. I'm going to only use the gifts that God gave me and make money and make enough money to survive, even if I'm barely surviving, on the gifts that God gave me, because that's what I've done my whole life, and He always tends to provide that way. I had never really sang jazz music before. However, it's my father's personal favorite music. So growing up, since the time I was born, we listened to either classical or jazz on every Sunday morning, before church. And it was in his car constantly. My mom loved Motown and pop music. So on her side, that's what I was getting. But when I was with Dad, it was all jazz and in classical. So I loved jazz music. I never knew that it was something that I could really do, apart from kind of being in the jazz choir at school or whatever. But there was a listing for an audition for the Duke Ellington Orchestra. And I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, well, it's not like Duke Ellington because he's not here. But quickly learned that it is the acclaimed and the real deal Duke Ellington Orchestra. So I thought, why not? I need money and I got to go audition, and I need to sustain a life here in New York City, the most expensive place.
I'm just trying to figure out this intuition back to that thing. So you just went, you didn't know anybody in New York.
I did not know anybody.
Wow.
I just moved to
That's
New York.
awesome.
And my mom cried sitting in my apartment floor in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, because that's where I first moved to, which at the time was not what it is now. It was real Bed-Stuy, do or die. That's where Jay-Z's from. It's really cool. So
no big deal.
no big deal. But I actually was so stoked because that's where Jay-Z's from. So anyways, my mom sat and then cried on the floor. She's like, I can't believe I'm driving back tonight. I'm not leaving you here. And I was like, well, you are. Then it's okay. I'll be fine. So yeah, really, really bold moves. I did not know anybody yet. And saw the audition, and the audition was held in Jeff Jeffers' house in Harlem. It was like the coolest place. It was a brownstone, like walk-up building in Harlem. And you walk into his living room, and the living room is this huge, enormous living room with a gorgeous, massive grand piano right in the middle of the living room. Awesome. You can tell this is his life, right? So I was like, whoa, this is cool. And didn't know what to expect for the audition. He handed me two pieces of sheet music. One was A Train and one was a song called Squeeze Me that is a duet with Jeff during the show. And of course I knew A Train just from listening to jazz music with my dad. I did not know Squeeze Me at the time, but he said, well, let's start with Squeeze Me. It's easier than A Train. I said, sure. And I said, could you play it for, play it one time through for me? So I'm sitting there thinking, uh-oh, I don't read music.
I was just about to ask, did you have that knowledge? Okay, all right, continue.
Did not read music, but knew that if I could at least pick up what he was doing. I said, play the melody line and, one time through for me. And he said, sure. I said, I want to catch your vibe. I was trying to play it off. And then he played it through once and he said, ready? I said, yes, sir, let's do it. Sang through Squeeze Me. And at the end of that, he said, so you don't read music, do you? And I was like, oh, gosh, that must have been super obvious, and I must have gotten it totally wrong, right? And I said, oh, was it that obvious? And he said, well, yes, but it was perfect. He said, I've only worked with one other singer my whole career that's like you. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, Ella.
Wow. Ella Fitzgerald.
Thank you. I was like,
wow.
Whoa.
You got an Ella Fitzgerald
chills
comparison.
up my spine. I was like, Ella? Like Ella? And he was like Ella.
Wow.
And he said she had perfect pitch, and she would do the same thing. She'd walk in and say, play it for me once. He'd play it, and then she'd sing it. And he said, do you want the job? And I said, well, sure. That would be amazing. Thank you.
So
and
you have perfect pitch.
Well, he said so.
Hey, I'm not disagreeing with Jeff.
I would trust him,
I would
but
trust him too. Yeah.
I still don't know. I don't read music. How can I know?
So you never learned?
No.
Still from wow.
No, I
crazy.
felt after that experience, and then working with him and the band. Ooh, wow. Oh, made me feel so small in my talents. They're so insanely talented. We got one rehearsal. Mm-hmm. One rehearsal before you go live at Birdland in New York City in front of the biggest critics of jazz music there possibly could ever be that are coming to watch the shows. You get one rehearsal with an orchestra of close to 20 pieces, and you're talking massive brass wall sections, him on piano, drums, like full-fledged wall of sound. You get one rehearsal. The show opens with A Train, so it opened with me. And A Train is a beast in the sense that not only are the melody lines completely super intricate, but during the ad-lib section, which you have to do in jazz music, you have to vamp, you're just going. You're just rolling. You don't rehearse it. It's not something I'd pre-think about. You feel what whoever else is around you is doing, and you just open your gates of talent and let it go. It's a very scary but awesome feeling.
Yeah, it sounds like a freeing experience.
It is.
That's a lot about what jazz is about anyway. Improv.
That's 100% what it's about. So you open the show with A Train. I genuinely was shaking. My knees were, they say you can get weak in the knees. I've never felt that in my career except for that moment only. Oh, that's not true. One other time, which gets to the Spanish part in a second. But that time I was really, really shaking. And I had flown my dad up because he loved jazz music so much. And he knew that I was like a professional, but in his eyes, he was like, well, this is all just a joke. Like he's a businessman. He was like, none of this entertainment stuff will ever be real. But I said, hey, Dad, you want to fly up to New York? I'm doing a show, and I think you would really enjoy the show. I did not tell him it was Duke Ellington. I did not tell him that it was jazz. I did not tell him it was at Birdland. We show up at Birdland. He's like, we're at Birdland. This is like my favorite jazz place. I was like, I know. It's going to be a really cool show, Dad. Wow. And he's sitting there. So I was just, the stakes were high for me. It was like, he's either going to finally see me as the real deal, my dad, or he's still not going to get it, and that's okay. But, so he was sitting in the audience. Birdland is tiny. It's a very intimate place, too, which adds to the intimidation factor. I've sang in front of 55,000 people, and I've sang in Birdland, and Birdland is intimidating. You're right there. And they're all up on risers behind me, the 20-piece. And so one rehearsal, like I said, the curtain starts to rise and you hear the horns of A-Train. And the second that they start that wall of sound, it's just like it hits you in the back of your neck. And I've never felt any energy like it. Your hair like stands up and my knees were like buckling a little. And I have a thought. Kelly, sink or swim. Time to swim. And you just go.
Well, you definitely swam.
And we did.
Yeah,
I worked with the band for a little over a year. It was an amazing experience. They taught me so much and allowed for me to learn that music is just about feelings and following. And I built a whole career based around that in New York City, genuinely. Like shows that I would do specifically to that talent, which was, I'd call it like Suicide Sundays, where anybody could walk into my show on any Sunday night and tell me to sing any song in the world on the spot with no rehearsal whatsoever. And the purpose of the show was I had to do it. Wow. And so I built a whole career almost off of, in nightlife in New York City, off of that mentality of like, if you just listen to the chords and you just follow the rhythms, you're going to catch what it's supposed to be. And so all I needed were the lyrics in front of me. And then I could sing any song that somebody would throw my way. So weird, fun thing for me that I just love to do.
Superhuman.
Yeah, it's really cool. So they kind of taught me that.
That was something you said earlier I wanted to piggyback off of, just as far as like creatives. So you're pretty young at this time and you're going in, you're playing with this Duke Ellington Orchestra. Just insane. Like
insane.
And you say you were nervous, which you had every right to be. I mean, that's a crazy experience. So being around these people, did you kind of like feel like some kind of imposter syndrome or something at that time? You're just
No,
like,
not at all.
Like what?
No, I felt like myself completely.
Yeah.
I felt accepted for, completely who I was. I definitely was the only white person in the band for sure. And
How was
so in some ways you would think like maybe you did feel that sort. Nobody ever treated me any way but, wow, you have a talent and that's cool. And vice versa. I grew up that way. My dad is Jewish. We grew up in the South being Jewish. That's different in and of itself. So music is the most universal connector there can possibly be. So I didn't feel I had to be anything but myself. And they didn't make me feel I had to be anything. Jeff accepted me in from the moment that he heard me open my mouth. It was like there's no age here, there's no colors here, there's no differences. We just love music. And I feel really fortunate in that sense that I was accepted for who I am too, in an environment that usually is not that. And vice versa. I wouldn't have felt any differently. And it was an amazing experience. There was a moment probably of like, uh-oh, what have I gotten myself into? Not, am I being something that I'm not? Even though I had never sang jazz music before, I look at music as a whole. So it wasn't kind of like, well, I can't do that because you're not a jazz singer. It was, well, God gave me a gift. I need to survive and feed myself and take care of my rent out here. It's a job that's presenting itself. Let me see if I can do this kind of thing. I get where you would say that. And I think for me, the only feeling was, uh-oh, what have I done? Am I going to sink? Am I going to mess up? Am I good enough for this?
That's kind of more so what I meant by
good enough.
Like, did you feel like, yo, am I ready for this moment?
Totally, I agree with. You're right. And right before I opened my mouth in front of the audience, I had one doubt of, am I good enough to do this? And then it was like, well, you're here now. Yeah, so you better just go for it. But yeah, I could see that. And I'm glad that I have those feelings. I think I still to this day would have those feelings. And to me, if you don't, it's probably a good time to hang it up because you don't probably have as much passion anymore for what you're doing. I look at that as like the nerves and feeling like the questioning of, am I good enough to be here? Am I supposed to be doing this? Just means you care.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if I'm having those thoughts of like, oh man, am I good enough to this? It means that I care about the Duke Ellington legacy. I care about the people that are around me because they're the best of the best. And I'm questioning it only because I don't want to let them down or let people down that we're entertaining. So that means you care. And I always tell young artists now that are like, I can't do this, I'm too nervous, that it's like, well, that really just means that you care about what you're doing, and therefore it matters. And if you just go with that intention, even if you crack or you mess up or you forget a lyric or whatever, no one's going to care, because your intention and what you're giving off is, I want to do the best and be the best for all these purposes, not just my own, you know?
Yeah, I love that, because like the other thing it makes me think of is like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where like people who aren't that good think they're really good, like karaoke night, right? And they go up there with confidence, right?
I love it.
But like the people that are really good, like they've gotten past that point where there's not a lot of people to compare yourself to. So you're like, am I good? Because like the only other people are these great people.
Yeah.
So like that's a, you know, I like the idea though that it's also the fact that you care too. Like
that's kind of how I feel about you sometimes, bro. When you like hit me with all those facts, I'm like, dude, am I smart? Like,
hey, we all have our strengths, and I don't believe that any of us have weaknesses. Actually, that statement of like we all have our strengths and weaknesses. I think we all have our strengths, but not really weaknesses, just lack of experience in something. And so if you find something that you think you're weak at, it just means you haven't done enough in it or experienced it enough. And so if you really don't want to be weak at it, you can change that and you can turn that around. So my strengths are because I've dedicated a lot of time and effort to those strengths. And so he's smart because he's maybe born that way. I don't know, but yeah,
a lot of reading.
I think about that thing though of like one of my favorite artists of all time right here from the Nashville scene is Hayley Williams from Paramore, and I think about how maybe she must have felt doing Coachella recently, just kind of coming out of the woodworks and hopping on stage with the biggest artist in the world right now, Billie Eilish, and and believe it or not, Hayley and Paramore have never played Coachella, which is just wrong. Really? Yes. No. Hello, Coachella, make note. Like, Billie Eilish is amazing, but that's Paramore. They would crush, Coachella. But how she had to have felt the same way. And she's singing her first massive hit, Misery Business. And like, I hope she still felt like, oh man, am I refreshed enough? Am I cool enough to be sitting here with Billie Eilish and singing this song? And she still gives that humility and humbleness off even when she's performing. And I felt like, gosh, it was so cool to watch because she just beasted it. She owned it. It was awesome.
Well, hey, we're going to take a quick commercial break here. We're going to get a little bit of power back in these cameras before we talk about your wiki.
Sounds good.
Hey, all right. That's all I'm trying to look in my life. Cool. All right. We're back. All right, so yeah, I read on Wiki you have a 5.5 octave vocal range.
That's true.
And your Wiki's in Spanish. So now we can talk about why
it's so strange. I do have a 5.5 octave vocal range. That just means I can do whistle tones. So I have probably the same normal range of a female on the low end, but on the high end, not so normal. And discovered it just from being in the car at 9 or 10 years old, driving with my mom, listening to this really cool new song that had just come out by this really cool new artist named Vision of Love by Mariah Carey. And I thought it was the coolest song ever. And that part of the song came on and I sang the note and my mom was like, hey. And she turned down the radio. She's like, did you just sing that high note? And I was like, yes, ma'am. Thought I was in trouble. And she said, we should talk to so-and-so at the church, the choir director, and see if he says anything about that. I was like, okay. So we did, and our choir director at the time had said, well, yeah, that would mean that she's a coloratura soprano, which is like the highest of high sopranos, but she's only 9 or 10. So, like, that's to be determined. At 9 or 10, who knows? But it never went away. So I always have had whistle tones. Yeah.
So gifted.
Literally,
that's awesome.
Anytime, anywhere, wake up, first thing in the morning, not warm up, just eat a bag of Cheetos, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Random question to that. So like dog whistles. Mm-hmm. How far is that frequency from like the frequency of a dog whistle?
I don't think anywhere near. I think dog whistles are like, you're supposed to not even be able to hear them with your normal ear. Only dogs are supposed to be able to hear them. So I don't think I sing anywhere in the capacity of a dog whistle.
So Snoop Dogg can hear it.
I bet Snoop can hear.
Okay.
He, he gets on other platforms in this world. But yeah, no, I can hear those things. Interestingly enough, like I was on my friend's property up in New York, upstate New York, and they have a bunch of animals. So they do the thing where they have those sound things for wildlife, where they're kind of planted all around the property, where it gives off supposedly such just a high pitched noise that the wildlife won't come in to kill their chickens or whatever, through the certain barrier of that sound, whatever. And I didn't know that they had that on their property. And we were walking from like one spot on the property to another. And I was like, whoa, what's that? And she was like, what? I was like, do you not hear that? And I walked 2 feet further and it was gone. And then I was like, whoa, I thought I was being called on by the aliens. And I said, you can't hear it.
Do you get a headache from it?
No, you get a buzz and like you feel, I heard it, but also you just feel it. Like I felt it in my brain and in my hairs, in my ears. I walked 2 steps back and it came back and I was like, yo, you guys, like you seriously don't hear this? And they're like dying laughing. And I was like, what? I was like, am I being attacked? And they said, no, we don't hear it, but we do have these systems on our property. And they're like, this crazy, you can hear it.
To keep singers off.
Yeah, keep singers off of it, keep musicians off of it. But yeah, so that's how I know, but I can never hit that note. No, not in a million years.
Wow. Good ears. Perfect pitch, maybe.
Who knows?
Talented person you are. So why is your Spanish wiki? What's up with that?
What's up with the wiki in Spanish?
What's up?
Okay, so remember the other time I told y'all that I had the feeling of weak in the knees. So it was honestly, I think, one of my last major things that I did as an artist before I started transferring onto this side of the business as a full-time type gig. I was still a full-time singer and full-time artist. And this was, I think, in 2013. That I was asked to represent the United States of America in a massive world competition called the Viña del Mar International Song Festival. It's kind of like Eurovision, but for the Spanish-speaking countries of the world, which is huge, right? There's millions and millions and millions of people. And so there's the competition has been around for over 50-something years. The United States has never even made it into the finals. I don't know why. Maybe because our elite and our best of the best are not going to compete in things like that. And Mariah Carey wouldn't, I don't know. But I used to tour when I was signed to Warner. I opened for Michael Bolton on tour for a year and a half. And so I kind of became close with his camp. And one of his keyboardists had written this song with one of the singers on the tour, and she couldn't go to sing the song to represent it in the competition. It's a worldwide competition where, it's the best song in the world and the best singer in the world that wins the awards. So she couldn't go sing it, but they were like, gosh, who else could sing this? It's a really difficult song. It would be someone like a Celine Dion that could. It was a really hard song to sing. And they said, do you remember Kelly King that used to tour opening for us? And they said, yeah. So they reached out to me and they said, hey, would you mind going and representing the United States? Because we can't go. And it's a 2-week commitment because you have to go through these, like round after round after round when you make the top 10 or whatever. And the United States didn't even make the top 10 initially. It was Canada that made the top 10, but Canada had to back out. So the runner-up to the top 10 was the United States. So we were just underdogs from the jump. And long story short, I agreed to go do it. It's a very difficult song. I added my own twist on it with the whistle tones in the song. And you perform in Chile. It's called the Green Giant, I think is what they call the venue. It's an indoor-outdoor massive amphitheater. It seats 55,000 people. Wow. Huge. And the stage is enormous. I've never seen anything like it. The Green Monster, yeah, that's what they call it.
Since then?
Never seen anything like it.
Really?
No, it was phenomenal. And they are known for booing people off stage, like at the Apollo in New York. If they don't like you, if the monster doesn't like, it's why they're called the Monster. If they don't like you, they will boo you off the stage. And so you hear about this in the press. I kept hearing about these things. also, no one really spoke English. You get off the plane, you kind of have someone there to help guide you a little bit. But then rehearsal started for our song. I had no idea that they had choreographed dancers and costumes and this whole storyline, because the story is everything in those countries, you know, and music and stuff. And I'm like told, you stand here. That's the direction I got. Like there was an X on the stage, you stand here. And then all this other stuff was unfolding around me during the rehearsal. I was like, what is going on? It was like this like Gollum type character. He literally looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Was the bad guy in the story, and then there's like a princess, and there was this whole storyboard to my song that I was representing and singing. But I was like, cool, this is neat. No one expected us to win. We were already, you know, like America's never won. They're not going to win. Mm-hmm. And I made the semifinals, and that's when they let the audience finally in. So you do the first parts through just judges rounds or whatever. We made semifinals, which I think that got down to 6 countries in the semifinals, if I'm remembering correctly. And that's when the monster comes in and you perform in front of 55,000 people. And it's broadcast to millions of people. So if you ask anyone from South America or from a Spanish-speaking country like that, have you ever heard of the Viña del Mar? They light up. They're like, that's the greatest, most prestigious award you could. It's like winning a Grammy to them. Mm-hmm. And it's this silver seagull statue that you win if you win. And so it was a big deal there. And I remember it's all live band, all live singers, all live entertainers on stage with you. And it was the semifinal night. And I was like, I've got to do this. And that's the one that exists on YouTube. The performance was from the semifinal round.
Are your performances on YouTube?
Yeah, okay. Quite a few. And you see me, like, I'm nervous, like, standing there just like, holy crap, what am I looking at? This sea of people. And then you even see, I'm weird about ear monitors. I am this strange entity that does not like to hear myself when I'm singing. And always off stage was like, no, turn down. I want the lightest amount just to keep tempo and make sure I'm in, you know, on the key. And that's it. I don't like to hear too much of myself or anything. So I was like, turn down. Somebody right before I went on stage, I think had seen my mic pack or the monitor pack, and it was really low, and they cranked it up, and the first note starts. I'm like, "Will I believe?" And I'm like, "Ooh, that is way too loud." And you see my hand go back and turn it down, and there's like this certain point where I'm like, keep the dream alive, and I'm looking around and seeing the thing happen next to me, the dancers and stuff, and I was like, ooh man, I am botching this. I need to just remember where I come from. And that's what I did. I was like, I'm American. We don't stand still when we sing. We have passion and like freak out on stage. And I was like, I can't do this. So by the time that first kind of chorus was over, I was like, I'm out of here. And you see me like beeline and start working the stage and the audience, because that's what I do. And I didn't care if I won or not. I cared if they had a good time and didn't boo me off stage. So I started performing the way that I know to. And you see camera people chasing me. They're like running around like, where's she going? What's she doing? And so I'm the first American to ever win the Viña del Mar. And
first and only?
First and only.
No.
As far as I know, I don't think anyone's won since. Yeah.
Go America, man.
Some 50-something years was the first ever. Now I think they're probably at the 60-year mark of the show, of the event. I don't know, but
so you've served our country.
I have proudly, because my father's in the Marine Corps, and so yes, it was a proud moment for sure, and a hard song to sing, and I won Best Vocalist in the world is what they call it. So they are more responsible for the wiki. That was probably the most world acclaimed event that I did. Mm-hmm. Even when opening for Babyface and for Michael Bolton and touring, and I did a bunch of USO tours and all that kind of stuff. But the most global, I think, effect that I got to have as an artist was that. And so that's why my wiki page is in Spanish. Is because
did they change that like before you went kind of thing, or is it because of that
I don't even think I had a wiki page before it.
Oh,
it was
that's
that
awesome.
Event was such a big event in the world that I think I even Googled one day my name, and I was like, I have a wiki? It was that same kind of thing. And then I was like, and I can't read it. I have no idea what it says.
But
Google Translate. It's centered around Viña, And it's a big deal to win that. And so I think that's how the page was created and why my wiki's in
That's
Spanish.
actually really cool, like, to find out, like, because that means someone down there probably actually, put it up.
Oh, they know me. Yeah. And those countries, they now know me. I'm the only American to ever win.
So you're like a celebrity in Chile.
In weird places. Weird places. Yeah.
So you just pop up in Chile. It's all good.
I don't know. I don't even know if they'd remember me. That's the one and only time I've been. But it's funny because, I got off the plane in New York City after that, straight to like, get out of the way. I'm like, wow. Well,
just back to
right back
everything.
to earth. Yeah, it was
Humbling.
amazing. Yeah, here we are, New York City, yelling at me and smelling all to high. It was like,
That's
well,
crazy.
that time is done. But that was the second and only other time that I felt that kind of nerves. And it
So was that
awesome.
around the same time? Because I read your first album was called Live the Dream.
Live the Dream.
So you were living the dream.
That definitely was. That
Yeah.
came out way before this.
Way before,
This
okay.
song was just also called "Keep the Dream Alive." It's like the dreams are like the theme for me, I guess. But yeah, no, that was very interesting experience and one that I'll never forget. And you do feel a sense of pride when you're representing your country like that.
So was that like some of the last musical stuff you were doing before you transitioned?
It really
more to
was.
the
I
business
recorded
side?
that song shortly after.
Mm-hmm.
I did a Spanish version of it, even because of just my thankfulness to the community and how their support was for me. So it was one of the last things I recorded, even. And then I really kind of dove headfirst into the other side of the business.
Boom.
Yeah, I was already kind of transitioning into that side of the business because I started to like fully enjoy artist development. Just knowing so much from A to Z about this business from the time I was little on up, I constantly found myself being asked for help. And then it became something that I really enjoyed, was just like, oh, wow, it's as rewarding as feeling like you need to be the star yourself, to feel like you can make an impact on someone in their career, even if you're just teaching them one silly thing like a whistle tone. You made an impact on them, small or big, and then they could go on then potentially to make a global impact on the world. And you had a tiny little thread in that. So it's, in a weird way, it's just as rewarding to me. And I saw what a difference that just my vast knowledge could make, that my whole life still made sense. It wasn't like, and I had dark moments for sure where I was like, oh gosh, I'm now in my 30s and I never made it. And I had these glimpses of it right there. And you'd think you can get really down about that, and you can. And that's okay. You're human. And I'd have conversations like, God, why did I live this life, this full-fledged life of this since I was 10? And, then all of a sudden it's just perspective is everything. When I shifted that perspective of, well, of course I need all that I went through to be good around other people, to help them understand, and then for them to fully trust me. When I'm dealing with an artist, they can go listen to my vocals and know, she knows way more than I do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to listen to her. And versus like maybe some people on this side of the business that have never sang a note in their life, and they're trying to give you a vocal critique, or they're trying to say, I think you can get more, and they may have a knack for that with or without being able to sing. I'm not saying that, but there's just this a little added edge,
There's some
extra sauce.
validity in what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's like the real like hero's journey. You went out and got this boon, this valuable piece that you can now bring to others, and like that. Now the reward is in giving the boon out to others.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's like, I look at that as such a gift. My mother was the most hurt by my career change. She was like, why are you quitting singing? I'm like, you don't quit something that you just are. I'll never quit singing. I can't. I'm singing everywhere all the time. And I still do events, and I still will participate in things. What I love to do the most of is sing in church and sing for, that kind of work, and sing backup for people who I love and are my friends, or hop on an album and do some feature parts because no one else can do what, I can do. And so I still will do all those things either for super fun or for a lot of money. That's usually the only
So
time I'm doing
what's the
it.
criteria for either one?
I think the super fun ones are for me to show my love and support for people that I love and that I want to, kind of be there for, or church, more importantly, if it makes a difference in, God's work. And then the high paid stuff is I typically won't go do a session or sing on a record like that as a lead vocalist for like less than $5,000. Just because you're talking, you got to value where you did get in life, and I had 3 top 20 Billboard hits and won the greatest singer in the world acclaim. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
And so if it's like some outside thing where someone is calling me in and going, we need your speciality, we need the 5.5 octaves, that's a big ask. There's not many people in the world that can do that. So I do want to value what God gave me, and those are few and far between
I think
now.
that's God
but
talking to you like, oh yeah, Kelly, it's all good. You're gonna get at least 5 racks minimum.
Yeah,
It's all
get some
good.
earnings from
Like,
this. Yeah, but that's
Don't
few
worry.
and far between now. But they can still come.
Yeah.
It's like there's these massive gigs in China that I used to do. I've been to China 7 times singing, and they're one of the other places in the world that know who I am, which is very strange. But I'm talking, they pay for you to be able to come in and sing a Mariah Carey song live or a Celine Dion song live. They will pay you, because otherwise you're getting Mariah and Celine and they can't get them, so in a weird way it served me well. I have a little bit of a niche with that ability, and so it's just smart to value that niche.
It's also kind of
just sing
cool
for
that
fun.
you're like famous on 2 completely
Yeah,
opposite
right.
Weird,
sides of the
different
world, South
spectrums.
America.
I know.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's very strange. And I don't know anymore. That seems like lifetimes ago, when I was doing all those gigs and stuff. So who knows? But either way, it was something I treasure. And I'm proud to say these things. I know some people might be listening and going, gosh, she's arrogant. No, I'm proud of it. It was a lot of hard work. And every time I went to go sing, it was a mission physically. Like, it's not easy to sing like that. I think about artists today and how easy it is to record music now, because I didn't have help with recording. When I was giving Live the Dream, the album, for example, is one of the most physically challenging things I've ever done in my life, was recording that album. And you can go listen to a Whitney Houston album or Mariah, Celine, all those giants, and they worked so hard for those types of vocals. And I know that feeling. It's really, really hard work. So I think when you are out of it, it's easier to have some of these moments of pride of like, nah, what I did was pretty rare and amazing, and I acknowledge it and I accept it and I'm thankful for it. And I'm grateful I got to do it even on the small scale, nowhere near the scale of Whitney, God rest her, all of those that were my idols, so just even doing it on the smallest level, I know how hard it was to perform that for 2.5 years straight when I toured the music, live in those environments, singing those kinds of songs and those notes without support of auto-tune and live auto-tune and those kinds of things. Because back in my day, that is the kiss of death of your career. If you sang with that kind of stuff, you weren't a real artist, So I think it's such a beautiful time for younger artists to just let it be about their art, as opposed to the show kind of showmanship of the things. I envy that, and I think it's really cool that they get to do it, but it's also way easier. There's different challenges. I'll put it this way.
I agree.
Different
I feel
challenges.
Like the age of auto-tune and things, I think it definitely takes away from
Made the process a little simpler to do.
Yeah,
But other things added to that are more difficult. I don't know how I could have handled the social media world.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think like the main difference was you really had to fight for it back then to get what you wanted, and now it's that you're fighting with other people who have as easy access to you
and equal talent, because now the talent playing field is a little bit
because there could have been someone
even.
who just didn't have access to recording equipment, but they could have been incredible. But now
everybody's
'cause of social
access to
media,
everything.
everyone's there, so now you're competing with a larger market.
To me, it's just as difficult, if not more. So I don't envy it.
I wanted to piggyback off of something you just said like a couple minutes ago. You're like, yo, like I'm saying all these things, like people might think I'm like arrogant or blah blah blah. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think it's more so that's why we do this personally, to have people like you come onto the show and show that it is possible, more so than anything. If I was listening, I'd be like, yo, oh man, like damn, she's like a star in Chile,
Wow.
like China.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's like
It's cute.
it's cool.
It's fun.
But what I wanted to piggyback off of that was A&R, artist development.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, it's a very different thing in today's age of music than it was, say, like the 70s, for example. And a guy I like to bring up is Bruce Springsteen.
The boss.
First couple albums, they're okay, but they actually took the time to help him develop as an artist and put that
Development's
money
a
into
dying
him.
breed too.
Yeah, so I hear that, you know, there's not a lot of budgeting and stuff nowadays for like artist development due to a lot of people nowadays are just looking for, hey, are their numbers right, or are the streaming numbers and things like that. So what is your view as an A&R, and how do you kind of approach it in this modern age?
Well, I ask the whys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it actually starts with the consumer. And unfortunately, we've reached a point in our business where when you're making pennies off of a stream, right? And even though it can be millions of streams, don't blame the labels, don't blame the management.
They always do that.
What can we do? We can't make money hardly either. You know what I mean? It's like so how can there be the budgets that there used to be for development when you cannot get the return on it that you used to could get? Yeah, at $10 to $15 an album being sold versus now pennies, right?
So wait, before you go, you said don't blame the label. Yes, I see a lot of artists do that. So when you were an artist, before you got more into like the business side, did you think more like that, or you always kind of had this?
I did. I came from the old school mentality of like, you know, if you did not have the label support, there was no way you were going to fly. And that's the truth. And I think that my own faults in my career path were not really sticking to my gut of what kind of music I wanted to make. People would hear my voice and say, "You're this," which I get and I understand, but there was already Celine Dion. There was already Mariah Carey. And I think what I wanted to do with my instrument and the way that my instrument was actually my favorite artist of all time is Led Zeppelin.
Really?
And male artists in general. I love Pearl Jam. I love the 90s angst. I love the way that Robert Plant used his voice was kind of what inspired me to explore my voice more. I would have liked to have made like some sort of really cool Southern rockish type, you know. Now I see artists like, Haley kind of did it a little bit. That's a little more punk than what I was thinking. But that and, what's her name that sings The Joke? Brandy Carlisle. You know, like some of these vocalists and singers that use a little more rock bass in their stuff. That's the way I had imagined that those whistle tones would be filtered to some crazy amp sound that I would compete with a guitarist on and do this really cool duo moment vocally. That's how I envisioned it. And anytime I talked about that with the people that I was involved with, it was like,
It didn't make sense.
no.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of record labels, they tend to see like what's working and then they try to match that. But then the problem, like you said, there's already that person out there. So now you have a competitor.
And I get that mentality because the whole old marketing rule, like, right, where there's room for one, there's room for others. And so I totally get the reasoning behind that. But I think where an artist can hold their most truth and power is in if you really, really feel strongly against the direction that you're going in, you do have the ability to say to your label and to your A&R team, this isn't right. Trust me. Let me try. Let me take a stab at the direction I want to go in, and then we'll go from there. 9 times out of 10, they'll say, okay, you got it. Let's try. But most of the time, we're easily, and I was raised in the South where it was like, no, you be grateful and thankful and gracious and just say yes, ma'am, and no, sir, and thank you. And, you know, I definitely had a level of like, okay, sure. Now I'll just go belt out, you know, these crazy songs. You know, it was that kind of mentality. I was so grateful for my deal. I was so grateful for the opportunities that were there. But, you know, ultimately, it wouldn't have been rude of me to kind of put my foot down and say, I really want to try making this kind of record. Can we just see how it sounds? And they would have gone for it. Absolutely. And who knows what would have been carved out from there. So I use that a lot in my world today on this side of the business. I really do try to give artists the benefit of the doubt to say, if they're really feeling adamantly. Now, again, you've got a lot to learn, and you should learn from people around you. But if an artist is saying like so adamantly to me, I'm not feeling this. This is not something I would say or do. And I tried it, but it's not for me. I want to switch directions. Then I support that fully.
So
and
when you see like real
that.
conviction, like that's when you're like, okay, I'll consider
Then I know.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. And when they've tried it, because they should try what the professionals around them are saying, you know, it should be a two-way street.
Yeah.
So what's that? Oh,
I was just gonna say it's interesting because like I'm from the marketing world, and one of my favorite books, and it's a very small book, but very few people have read it. It's called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. And one of the laws is the law of category. And that's why it's so interesting, like the way you're describing that.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that basically when there's categories that are created all the time, right? If you go to soda, you got Coke and Pepsi, right? There's also, that's one of the other laws, the law of duality. There'll be two that rise to the top, and everyone else will be light years away. But
And in music, it's like threes, but yes.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, exactly, like there's this interesting rule that keeps matching, and one of those is the law of category, where it's like I think the name's like Bert Hinkler. Like, have you ever heard that name?
You have.
I think is it Bert Hinkler? I'm trying to think.
Something, I know what you're talking about, from a marketing.
No, he's not a marketer. No, this guy is. That's exactly it. You probably think it's somebody else, but this guy no one's ever heard of. He is the second person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. The first being Lindenberg, right?
Okay.
But no one's ever heard of this guy
The other
because
guy.
he's the second.
Definitely haven't.
Yeah. And so, but the next person to do it was Amelia Earhart.
She was first
And the
female, though.
First female, and because she had a new category, she rose to the top.
Right.
Right.
You know, I'm not
And
gonna
it's-
even lie, bro. I don't even know the first two.
The
guys,
Lindenberg,
bro.
I know, like some
I don't
people
even
forget
know them.
Lindenberg. They
But
remember
you know
the,
Amelia.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And so
It's
sometimes,
even more
like,
impactful.
going after that new category that hasn't been touched yet can be this huge opening.
Right.
So like when you mention that you're looking at artists, I actually like that rule of three. That is interesting because like I feel like like RC Cole is pretty far down away from Pepsi, but like
Right.
there is that like they still
The
exist
big
and they're
two,
still
and
pretty
then
big.
there's- Yeah, a few more. Yeah.
But when you're looking at artists, what do you consider looking at those that exist and trying to pull them away from that, or do you try to shape them towards that and then figure out where they fit?
No, I think I've learned the hard way to try not to shape them, period. You know, to let it figure itself out.
You're just there to enhance.
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Now, if that winds up being something that is like, oh, wow, you're so like Michael Jackson, that's still authentically that person. But I wouldn't want them to force themselves to be like Michael Jackson. It's like when The Weeknd first came out, there was a lot of comparison to Michael Jackson, right? Has it worked for The Weeknd? Yeah, say so.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. You know, but I don't think he was forcing. I don't think that was him as an artist going, ooh, there's a category. I can go fill it because I kind of have this light, airy voice. No, I think he was just being authentically himself, and it happened to fall into the category of one of the greatest artists of all time, you know? So, and now he's one of the greatest artists of all time. So I do feel like it kind of comes down to more of like letting go of all your preconceived notions about how someone should be as they're going through the developmental process. Some are just automatically what they are. Like you just can't see it any other way. And you know, but with an artist that's really trying to find themselves, even if you see a super clear vision for them, you might be spot on. And I'd say I'd put money on like my guts on those kinds of things with the artists that I work with, but they may be sitting there going, no, I don't want that. That's not me. And so how can I push it? I have an artist that I work with, and she's unbelievably talented. And I look at her as like a full-fledged like Kelly Clarkson beast route. Anytime you utter the words Kelly Clarkson, she's like, no, that's not me. She's too country. I'm like, Kelly is not country. Everybody has their own perception. That's like the gift of music, is it's so different. So whatever her perception of why she thinks Kelly Clarkson is a country artist, I don't know, but that is like the kiss of death words for her. She doesn't want anything to do with that, but I guarantee you she's going to find her money spot eventually, and it's going to be the Kelly Clarkson I know,
was gonna
which
say,
is
is
that rock pop kind of thing.
So
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you're dealing with artists, how much thought are you putting into like the people you want to get around this artist? Because like,
A lot of thought. Everything is
Yeah.
strategy to me.
so is there like a certain? Because like we say, artists will have their own styles or have their own unique things. So like, what are you thinking when you're like, oh, okay, this person has a certain sound? Like, who am I trying to put around this person to enhance that?
I actually think everything that I've done now on this side of the business, and I have not been on this side of the business that long. I want to note for your listeners that I'm new. Like, I was an artist for 28 years of my career. I only really started dabbling in this now probably 7 or 8 years ago. So I have not been on this side of the business that long. And a lot of that was transitional, learning how this side of the business works, all that kind of stuff. So, and I have developed a few artists that went on to sign major label deals, and one that I signed a few years ago. She's just now popping off with one of her songs, and I'm not even on her team anymore, but seeing like the work that we did early on. And, so I'm seeing some success coming from the things that I did, but I wouldn't say I've had my big break yet with my big artist yet. So please take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm learning as I'm going too. But I think for me, everything has, from what I've learned at least now, it is full strategy. I'm thinking of the entire chessboard when I'm looking at an artist's career. It's like I almost feel more of a sense of responsibility for artists that want to work with me and that I work with than I did for my own career, because it's like it's their life, and it's this weird
it's a reflection of you
and
as
they
well.
kind of like trust you to do it too. Like that's the other thing, like the
so I
belief.
try to look at every scenario on the board possible before. So when I'm strategizing people to get them with, it can range from, actually, I know that session won't go too well, so I'm going to put her in that session or him in that session because it will challenge them to start thinking outside the box. It will challenge them to not, feel so complacent, and maybe they'll work harder as a result of it in the next session that is a little more catered towards what is their bread and butter, and then they'll work harder at it. I try everything in the kitchen sink throwing in an artist because I want them to know all sides of the spectrum. And I sometimes will put, a full-fledged rap hip-hop artist in the room with only country writers.
Interesting.
That's actually a good move too. It's stress testing them. You're like you're trying to get them to break their.
Do you know what happened in that setting? It was the coolest thing. He was bringing these really cool, like kind of more hip-hop rap melodies, rhythms, I'd say the rhythmic melodies that he does in, and then the country artist that was sitting there was like telling a story that was way cooler to tell, but then looking at him and going, well, what would you say from where you're at in New York? In Atlanta, we say this about a girl in short shorts. What do you say? It was like, and the things that were coming out were like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. Yeah. And so that was one of his favorite sessions ever, and one of the favorite songs he's ever written, so it's really cool. Yeah. I also like taking super young, up-and-coming artist writers and putting them in the room with legendary writers that are old school to the max, and then a super, fast, like Pro Tools type producer right there as well. So you've got the old schooler who's like, can all those sounds that you got, like, let's just write from the guitar, and you've got this dichotomy going on, and oh my gosh, it's sometimes really cool. You just pull out different things with each other.
That's funny because it's like, I get where you're coming from on the mindset of that, because it's a lot of it when you're putting these people in rooms, a lot of it is not just their music, you're assessing them as a person and their character, because a lot of artist development is about where is that artist's mindset at?
Yeah.
What is their mission?
What do they really
where do
want?
they want to be? That's a good question a lot of times, like, are you just trying
That's a great question.
Get by on music, be able to pay a few bills, or you're trying to be like a star, that kind of gives you it lets you assess the level of work you may have to put in. So very, very interesting.
It's so true.
Yeah, that's something that we like to ask artists when we're talking with them. It's like, what do you want? Like, are you trying to make a living? Are you trying to, do this professionally and, really grow big? Or are you trying to be like top 40? Like, there's a huge difference. Like, is this a hobby, or like, is this your whole life?
What do you think Ed Sheeran would have answered?
Can we let Jack answer? Can we let Jack answer that? Actually, come here, Jack. Come here, Jack. You are allowed.
That's all right.
Come on.
Oh gosh.
I would like to hear from a man
like the
that's there himself. Like,
But I do wonder what Ed Sheeran would have answered.
I feel
part
like
of
he
me
probably
feels
would
like
have
he
said,
would have said,
like, I want to do it for a living. He might not have said a superstar. I feel like he
That's
would have
what
just
I
wanted
think.
to like do something he loves and make
that
money with
I
it.
think he would have said that, but yet look at what the outcome. So it's kind of like, I think that's it's like a loaded weapon, that question.
Yeah.
And I'm getting you off the hook here, my friend. It's a loaded weapon because why should they know? It's like I understand that question. And I've asked it myself to many, many artists, but thinking about it from the artist standpoint, it's like, well, duh. Of course I want to make a living at this. And duh, of course I want to be a superstar. And duh, I hope that my music makes top 40, because top 40 only means that it's top 40 because it's popular, not because it's a certain genre of music, but because it's popular music. So
Andy Warhol.
I just feel like it's like, what are you really hoping to get out of that answer from an artist?
Yeah, I feel like very often it's trying to see how they respond to it. Like if they're really quickly like top 40, it's like, I don't think so. I think like you're just like, that sounds like the best answer, so I want to say that.
Yeah.
Like
But what if they genuinely mean it? You know what I mean? It's like
It's
well,
the
they
I've
can
why
caught
genuinely-
myself with this question,
Yeah.
so I'm debating
Yeah.
you on it, because I'm like, I've literally thought to myself too, like it's like the typical question that any executive that I've worked with, and I've worked with some amazing executives, say and ask, and I'm always thinking to myself, like, what do you think that they should answer?
I think it's that why follow up though. Like that's something where
The why is
yeah,
important.
yeah, it's like once they say that, if you ask a why, that's what I mean by the quickness. If their answer's really quick and then they give like a quick why, like they haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right?
I feel like, man, it's back to the earlier thing, like I was saying about self-awareness. I feel like every artist wants to be a star, but do you have that level of accountability
Yeah.
to realize that, there are certain processes or things you may have to do to
Or
shift to
give
get
up.
into that stratosphere that you want to get into? Because top 40 pop radio, there obviously is a formula. You
There
know?
really is.
So
It's interesting, of all the, any stars that I personally know, there's only one that I know that like probably wouldn't have, would have genuinely said like, I really don't care to be famous, but then it's like, but you knew you're that good that you would be. So what did you, now how does it make you feel? Like, are you glad about that? Are you happy? Are you sad? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it would be such a fun conversation to have with some people like an Ed Sheeran, or like,
It would be really interesting to get
to
those
ask
answers.
him and say, like, when you were asked back in the day, like, what do you want to do with music and why do you want to pursue this?
I'd be curious to know if like more higher level successful people just had the living, because I don't remember where he's from, but somewhere down south there is somebody, I don't know if he's even still alive, who was the smartest man alive, had like 195 IQ, and
What?
Yeah, and basically he went on some game show, won exactly the amount of
higher
money
than
he
Einstein.
needed, and then he left. Like they're like, you can keep going and win. He's like, no, I just needed this amount of money to live the rest of my days, and he left.
Sometimes being too smart
Well,
may be a problem.
For him, it was mostly like, I think he had like a weird childhood where he just didn't really want to be in that limelight, and he was just like, I went here, I got a chance, I got the money, and I'm gone. Like I didn't need the fame. And I feel like Sup3r8 was saying, just like that idea of like self-awareness.
Yeah.
Because there are some artists who they probably would be much happier being either like a songwriter or a studio artist and not getting the limelight, because that part's not the enjoyable part. It's the creation of something.
Yeah.
Where like some artists, it is that like I'm wowing someone and my presence makes them feel good.
Yeah.
Like, and that is a huge
And
difference.
so when I get that back, it makes me feel good inside. And it's, it's a lot of that you give, I give.
Yeah.
So just answer it. You don't have to come on camera, but what's your answer? Now I'm
Was Ed
curious.
Sheeran.
No, your answer. Like, why do you want to do music? Is it just to make a living, or is it?
I don't know. I've kind of wrestled with this
it's a
throughout the
question everyone
pandemic.
wrestles with, man. It's a true question.
Because before the pandemic, I was living off music for 7 years. Before that, I'd even from like we were saying earlier, when I was 7, I had this epiphany about becoming vegetarian, and within like a month of that, I had the same thing for music, and that's all I've ever wanted to do since.
And
And
sometimes
then-
you just don't even know why, right? You just know that's all you've ever wanted to do.
But as far as my personality and lifestyle, I'm really low maintenance. I'm quite happy living on a person's couch indefinitely.
Yeah.
So it's not a money thing.
Right. That you know.
Yeah. And I tend to go places and get familiar with people. So when I went to university, I had like a campus university. and I knew almost everyone on campus. So I felt like I've been famous. So it's not
like, that either.
Fame is not a driver. It's like a thing that when I'm not creating, there's something existentially wrong. And so even, once the pandemic hit and it's like I can't perform in front of people, and like even social media, I feel like I'm doing it to try and impress people, which again doesn't feel right, but I was still spending all day playing and doing creative things. So it's like I don't know, why does a hamster run on a hamster wheel? It's there, and I can't understand why I don't do anything else. Yeah.
Man, you guys, you would think you'd want to sign this kid.
What is your, how do you feel about the magicness of music? It's a very spiritual thing to me.
It's
frequencies.
It's completely magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's everything. It's science, it's magic, it's religious, it's now more than ever with the Atmos abilities that we have. Like I felt like a kid again listening to music at a concert. The way that made me feel when I was little was how I felt as a full-fledged grown adult who's heard it all and been around the best artists in the world. It made me feel that same way. It's a visceral, physical, and emotional and mental whole full capacity. Music is everything, and everything is music.
Yeah, it's super cool because I like I said, I'm like the marketing business guy, and I study a lot of random stuff, and one of them like anthropology and people and humans, and it's like, why did singing become a thing, right? Like birds, they communicate through singing, but why did humans? And I think the closest I got to an answer was apparently when you're in a choir and you're singing together, your heartbeats will synchronize.
Oh my gosh.
Really?
Which is a super interesting thing. And I think we actually learned that from one of our interns.
Stay true, King.
Yeah, and so like it was...
I kind of feel like from a science standpoint, it makes sense because you're breathing at the same time.
Well,
you're phrasing.
The weird thing is like,
time.
why would that happen though? Like, why would that be necessary? And I think it might have been, why did we play drums in war? Right now, some of that was to intimidate the enemy, but it could have also been to synchronize us as one sword, right? And that's kind
or
of the
to
idea.
energize or use it as a
Yeah, and so it's like a
moral
super
builder,
interesting,
morale builder.
Yeah,
Well,
morale
I think
builder. Yeah.
to bounce off of that, like the synchronization stuff. So there's this book I read by David Byrne, How Music Works, lead singer of Talking Heads. I love Talking Heads. There's a interesting chapter in there where he talks about how certain establishments kind of affected how music sounded over the years. So like cathedrals and things and churches like that, they would play the organ and things a certain way because these buildings like had a certain way. Yeah, acoustically they were set up. So like when Mozart would do his pieces, Beethoven, these guys, they would write these pieces for these theaters and things of the times. And I guess kind of as venues and things have evolved over time, we have these different kind of musical styles that evolve, like garage rock and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Yeah.
Look, sound design is sound design, and that is something that you can get super scientific about, right? And it's like, especially now that I'm dealing in our world here at East Iris with Dolby Atmos, there's, it gives you, like I said, we're made up of water and cells, and there's a lot of research and study behind certain frequencies affecting you in a negative way where you're like, ugh, I don't like it, and certain frequencies that make you feel better. They tell you to do it in certain, tones and whatever. There's something real to that. And I have to say, like, then when you're in this environment where it is all around you like that, your whole body, like, there's certain mixes that I hear that I'm like, I just want to go run through walls. Like, literally want to run through walls. It makes me feel that way. And it's like a drug. I don't do drugs, but it's from what people described, how they feel is how I feel when I'm sometimes encompassed in music sound like that. And then some of our different chambers, right? So like our different Studio A that has, the multiple different acoustic sound designed rooms, you walk in and you literally hear the difference when you just walk in the rooms of what their acoustic designs are. That also plays a role. And so the different types of acoustic chambers are so interesting to play with it's all fascinating and just.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned like the water thing because like, did you ever see that that experiment where they can get water to float with sound?
Yeah.
Right. So like it really does.
And
like
plants react that way with their cells and water. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I saw a dude like speaking good to his plant or something like that. Like, it was
well,
like,
they played heavy metal for like one plant, and then they played classical for another, and the one that was with classical music thrived and was beautiful, and the one that had heavy metal got sad and depressed and like wilted.
Okay,
yeah.
that's similar to
started an
the
emo
guy.
band.
Sorry, metalheads. I love metal, but like I can see where it would stress you out if you do it like all day, every day. But
Wow. Well, I guess so. Yeah, telling in towards the end of it. This has been a very good conversation.
It's been amazing.
Talking about studio management and kind of how you got into that. You've only been doing this here like
since last July, so almost a year. Yeah, studios are my literal favorite place in the world to be, and I felt like when I was up for the position here with UMG, I knew that it wasn't like that. I'm not the studio manager that knows every detail about every board. But I believe that my experiences since I was 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, I felt the most at home in a recording studio. And what made me feel that way, I looked at those things. It wasn't about the technicality of the boards and the microphones and all that kind of stuff. It was that it was a place where I felt I could completely be myself. I could open up my mind and my soul to a creative environment that was welcoming. It smelled so good and unique to me, from the way the gear smells to the way...
for the viewers, it always smells good here. And this is only my second time. But
in my studios, that's a big thing for
Oh,
me.
it smells. The second I walked in, I'm like, I can't figure out what it is, but it smelled like a caramel latte or something. I was like, what is that? Like, this is the whole studio.
Well,
it's incredible.
That's what I remembered as a kid, right? And I just knew that like that can play such a role in people's creativity, that was the effect that I wanted to have on what I brought to the table as a studio manager, was more that like hospitality side of making sure that you have the most memorable experience when doing the thing that we love the most, which is music. When you have that, I know that I'm surrounded by way smarter people than me that can handle this stuff, the sides of this stuff, the tech stuff. Trent, who was in here earlier, he's so gifted and amazing. So I know that that's unlocked. But what most studios don't think about, in my opinion, are how seamless you make the environment for the workflow to be. And that is my goal in it. I wanted any creative person to be able to walk in and feel like they didn't have to think about anything else. It didn't smell bad to where they're thinking about it smells bad. You're not hungry. You have plenty of options for things that you like. If you're gluten-free, we have that too. I don't want you to have to worry and think about that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the stamp that I took in coming in here. But then, in a weird way, I also know quite a bit about this stuff. I don't like to tout that or claim it, but when you've grown up doing this your whole life, there is a level that I understand.
You pick up
that
a
I
thing or two
innately
over
know.
the years, yeah.
That I can talk the talk a little bit. I can walk the walk a little bit. I'm learning from my bosses here. They're amazing. I have 2 of the most amazing mentors and bosses to learn from that have been in the studio world way longer and know the most amazing things and facts about our company at UMG. The history of the company is incredible. But what we're building here in Nashville specifically and at East Iris is very centered around community. And that's the part that I thrive in and that I love, and that I want the community to know that we exist. I want the community to know that we are doing wild thought processed things here, that we're open to any outsiders coming in and going, hey, we want to try things. We want to do things differently. I also want to encourage people to get out of their bedrooms again and get back into these incredibly creative. Yes. Yeah. And how wonderful of a time is it that we can, and it's like you said, if you just can't afford to do something and you still have an opportunity in this business because it's right there in front of you. But I'm hoping that what we can do here at East Iris is open our doors back up to all creatives and make sure that this is a place that the whole community feels they can come and be at. And you never know what kind of magic is going to come from that. Because as you just said, music is magic, and we're the incubator. We're where it starts at. So I think, that's our mission, my mission personally here. And I know that it's how the people around us here feel as well, that they want this place to be known as a place that's like, when you think of Abbey Road or you think of Capitol Studios in LA, it's got this feeling of, you probably don't know why when you're a little boy or a little girl, that you just have this, innate feeling of, I just want to do this in my life. You think of those places and you go, whoa, maybe one day I get to be there. My hope is that East Iris becomes that way too, that when they do have an experience here, they're going away and spreading the message far and wide of like, to that next little boy that's 7 years old that has an epiphany that this is what they want to do with their life. They're going, maybe one day I get to record in Nashville at East Iris Studios.
So if you kind of like so from like your music I listened to, you kind of experimental to me. Like you were kind of doing like some soulful pop ballads, kind of like some house dance tracks, electronic stuff here
It was
and there.
kind of
like
all over
it
the
was
place,
all
that's
like.
for sure.
So since you've been here, like with your musical like versatility and like what you know and what you like, has that kind of changed the type of client pool that comes here? Like have they been more accepting to different type of creatives and genres? Have
I
you
think
played
the
a part in
whole industry has become more open to all types of genres
Yeah.
coming in somewhere. And I think especially Nashville, the town has now
changed?
really
Musical.
become a place of being completely open to different genres and styles and artists coming through. We have, yes, here it has ranged from amazing, huge, hip hop based artists on to the biggest country stars in the world. Massive gospel and Christian artists have been through our doors. And then, rock gods like Robert Plant himself has been here. So I think we're really lucky at this studio and this campus of, who's walked through the door. But to me, the exciting part is all the future, the ones that come through that don't quite know what they're doing yet and that don't quite know what their sound is yet, but they're walking into these buildings here and they're like, whoa, I get to make music in here today. That's like, I don't know, the most
I love that. The
sweet spot.
The thing that was making me think of was, ironically, back to that the smell thing. Smells like huge. Like I think it's like the scent or the sense that's most tied to memory.
Yes, exactly.
And
Thank you
I
for-
love the
that's
idea
exactly why I
that
do that.
like someone could come here and then like that's part of what they're gonna describe. Like they'll be like, "There's all this stuff, it had all this, yeah, and it smelled like lavender or whatever it was." And like
They're
when
just gonna
someone
remember it.
else down the line comes, they might get that weird experience of like, whoa,
It
it's
really does
exactly
smell
like
good
they
in
said
here.
it was, right? Like I love that idea of like someone,
Yeah.
5-10 years from now coming here after like a bunch
Yeah.
of people have heard about this, amazing place,
So
and
they
that's what
may
happens.
hear,
They're like,
and they may,
it's exactly like they
that's
said it
my
was.
hope. I think there's a few things that come along with that because I remember I just didn't work quite as well when the place smelled bad. You know what I mean? I was
so
like,
it smelled bad. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
if something smells bad, you're just not going to be in the best frame of mind. I know it sounds silly,
That's
but
facts.
like,
No, you're not
I would
lying
sit
at
there
all.
and be like, I just want to get out of here because it smells like a stinky male locker room. You know what I mean? You just literally like, get me out of here. You don't want that when you're creating. You want to be able to sit there for hours and feel like you're totally comfortable, So that's the theory behind that for me. But yes, the memories and how memorable it can become. The other thing that I really do try to think about that's different than most studio environments too, again, just based on my own experiences living in studios since I was 10 years old, is there's sometimes not a whole lot of consideration for females. And so like you can walk into any bathroom and if a female's going through whatever they're going, you have to search through cabinets and be like, there's nothing, there's nothing, what am I going to do? I want it to be a place where, everybody can walk in and feel completely welcome. Everybody, all genders, all, nationalities, races, everything, and not feel like that we haven't thought about everybody. To me, that's the community feel that I was talking about. Another thing I'm pretty proud of, and again, this starts from the top down. My boss here is so phenomenal at just believing in things as well that need to happen in our industry, and one of that being that there needs to be more females in the engineering world.
I was just about to ask you about that. was about to say,
Yeah.
we got some beautiful ladies here.
We do,
Is that all you?
and
Yeah.
they're so rad and talented and amazing. But he allowed for us to explore this more, and it takes somebody sometimes taking those risks, you know, with you and going, wow, okay, you're right. There's literally hardly any female engineers or mixers or, you know, producers. So how can we change the game a little bit and not just talk about it, but then actually be supportive to go do it? We are 55% female engineers.
I was gonna say, yo, I see a lot more females here than males. It feels like most of the time. I'm
Yeah.
not complaining. I'm
Yeah,
saying,
and they're badass. They're amazing. They're so talented. They know their stuff. They've put just as much time and education into things as, you know.
like I would.
And you have to earn it no matter what. It's
Yeah.
not like we're just doing that. They're the best. That we went through processes of when we're hiring people around here or bringing people on board, everybody's looked at the exact same way. But we're going to actually try to give people those chances instead of it being like, you know, kind of like, oh, because I know him, he can, you know what I mean? And that happens a lot too, and that should be taken into consideration. But I'm just really proud to work in an environment and for a company that is allowing for that kind of growth to happen, but in the right way where people do deserve it and they earn it and they are, you know, fully beyond capable of, you know, those positions. So if y'all do get a chance to work here, you bring your artist by and stuff to work, I think you'll be very, very excited about all our staff members. And I know you only met Trent today, but there is a whole slew of them that are up and coming females that are gonna, I think, go on to dominate a lot in this industry. They're powerhouses for sure.
I'm all for it, man.
Thank you.
Shit, yo.
Yeah, that's so sweet.
Man, this is beautiful. I mean, community. You know,
Amen.
I always like to say some, you know, like philosophic shit or something, you know.
To close this out with.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But you know what it's all about, you know.
Spit some truth.
It's a
Let's
beautiful community thing. And you know, I have Oblique Strategies. So one of my top 5 producers is Brian Eno. Mm-hmm. And there's a card in Oblique Strategies. It's like, stop trying to build a wall and just take a brick. You know, when we all take our bricks and we put them together, we build a different kind of wall.
Amen.
And that's what you guys are doing here. So
I love that.
with that being said,
You're the cutest person ever. I love that. That was really sweet.
you know, I try. You know.
Mom, you raised this kid right. He's cute.
But yeah, you know, this has been a beautiful episode. I thank you so much for letting us be here.
Thank y'all
Pick
for
your
having
brain.
me.
Thank you for letting us take up some of your time. And yeah, guys, you know what it is. This is your Dude Superb,
It's Dillon.
Kelly.
Kelly King. And yo, love you guys. Gonna catch you on the next episode of MC2MC. Peace.
Thanks.
Yep.